My name is Autumn Walker, 28, and I work as a nurse in Boston. I never expected that rainy Tuesday afternoon would change my life forever. I was driving to Attorney Davidson's office for my grandfather Frank's will reading when it happened. As I approached the tall building downtown, I noticed him, a disheveled man huddled near the entrance. When I walked past, he suddenly grabbed my arm. "You're Frank's granddaughter," he said, his eyes clear and urgent. "Don't go there. They're waiting to hurt you." I froze, wondering how this homeless stranger knew my grandfather. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and hit subscribe if you haven't already. Trust me, the truth behind his warning is something you won't believe. Grandpa Frank wasn't just my grandfather, he was my rock. When I think back to my childhood, my brightest memories are the summers at his lakeside cabin in New Hampshire. He'd wake me at dawn saying, "The fish don't wait for sleepy, it's autumn." I'd grumble but follow him to the old wooden dock where he taught me to bait a hook and cast a line. The patience he showed me then was the same patience he showed years later when he'd quiz me on medical terminology while I struggled through nursing school. Even as I established my career at Massachusetts General Hospital, our Sunday dinners remained sacred. I'd drive to his modest colonial house in the suburbs and we'd cook together. Grandpa Frank made the world's best clam chowder recipe he refused to write down, insisting, "It's all in the timing, Autumn. Some things you just have to feel." During those quiet evenings, he'd share stories about his life that somehow always contained the perfect advice for whatever I was facing that week. The family dynamics around us, however, were far from idyllic. My father, Martin, walked out when I was 6, leaving Grandpa Frank to step in as the paternal figure in my life. My father's brother, Uncle Robert, was a successful businessman who ran a medical supply company that Grandpa had helped start decades ago. Unlike my grandfather's warmth, Uncle Robert had always been cold, calculating, and rarely visited unless there was something he needed. My cousin Derek, Robert's son, was 3 years older than me and seemed to resent the special bond I shared with Grandpa. During the rare family gatherings, he'd make cutting remarks about how I was playing the perfect granddaughter, while Aunt Patricia, Robert's wife, would watch with a satisfied smirk. They were a unit, the three of them, and I'd always felt like an outsider in their presence. When Grandpa Frank's health began declining 8 months ago, I took as many shifts as I could at the hospital to be available for his care. His heart disease progressed quickly, and what started as occasional shortness of breath soon confined him to his home, then to his bed. I'd stop by daily to check his vitals, adjust his medications, and simply hold his hand while we watched his favorite old Western movies. During those final weeks, he's grown increasingly concerned about something. "Autumn," he said during one of his more lucid moments, "there are things I need to make right, things you'll understand soon." When I pressed him for details, he'd squeeze my hand and shake his head. "All in good time, sweetheart. Just remember that the truth always matters more than money." I was the only family member who visited regularly during his illness. Uncle Robert called occasionally but claimed his business travel schedule prevented visits. Derek texted once to ask if Grandpa had gotten his affairs in order, a question that made my blood boil, and Patricia didn't bother with even that pretense of concern. When Grandpa Frank passed away in his sleep 3 weeks ago, I was devastated but not surprised. I'd been preparing myself for months, watching him slip away little by little. What did surprise me was the call from Mr. Davidson, Grandpa's attorney, informing me about the will reading. "Your grandfather was very specific about how things should proceed," Mr. Davidson had said, his voice formal over the phone. "He requested all family members be present for the reading at exactly 2 p.m. next Tuesday." I hadn't expected much from the will. Grandpa lived modestly in the same house he'd owned for 40 years. Maybe he'd leave me his fishing gear or some keepsake with sentimental value. I knew the cabin would likely go to Uncle Robert. It was valuable property on Lake Winnipsenos, and Robert had always talked about what he could do with that land. The night before the reading, Mr. Davidson called again. His tone had changed from formal to concerned. "Miss Walker, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of your punctuality tomorrow. I'll be there at 2, Mr. Davidson. I already took the day off work." Good. He paused long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Family matters can be complicated, especially in situations like this. "Situations like what?" I asked, feeling a flutter of unease. "There will be additional parties attending tomorrow. Your grandfather was quite thorough in his instructions." Another pause. "Just be prepared for some unexpected elements." After hanging up, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Grandpa Frank had never been mysterious or dramatic in life. Why start now in death? Little did I know, the homeless man's warning the next day would be the first piece of a puzzle that would reveal just how little I knew about my family and just how much danger I was walking into. The homeless man who grabbed my arm outside the law office didn't look like the typical street person I sometimes treated at the hospital's emergency department. Despite his weathered face and ragged clothes, his eyes were clear, intelligent, and focused intently on mine. His salt and pepper beard was unkempt but not filthy, and when he spoke, his diction was precise and educated. "Please," he said, loosening his grip on my arm but maintaining eye contact. "I've been waiting for you. Your grandfather sent me to warn you." I stepped back, creating distance between us. "My grandfather died 3 weeks ago," I said flatly, "and know when Frank died." Pain flashed across his face. He knew what they might do if he left everything to you. That's why he asked me to be here today. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm May afternoon. "Who are you?" "My name is Harold. Frank and I go back 50 years. He glanced nervously at the entrance to the building. "We don't have much time. They'll be watching for you. If this is some kind of scam, the documents were switched," Harold interrupted. "Robert made sure of that. Your grandfather's original will disappeared the day after he signed it." My nursing instincts kicked in, assessing him for signs of mental illness or substance abuse, but found none. "How do you know my uncle?" Harold's laugh was bitter. "Robert Walker built his fortune by destroying others. Ask him about Cornerstone Medical Supply's early days. Ask him about the defective heart valves that were never recalled." His voice dropped. "Ask him why your grandfather's heart medication kept changing in his final weeks." My stomach twisted at the implication. "Are you suggesting?" "I'm not suggesting anything. I'm telling you your grandfather didn't trust his son, and for good reason." Harold reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small brass key. "Frank wanted you to have this. It opens his old fishing tackle box." I stared at the key, remembering the battered green metal box that always sat in Grandpa's boat. It contained hooks, lures, and line, nothing valuable. "The truth is inside," Harold said, pressing the key into my palm. "But don't let them know you have it. And for God's sake, don't mention me to your family." "Why should I believe any of this?" I asked, but I found myself closing my fingers around the key. Harold's eyes softened. "Because Frank always said you were smart, that you could see through people's lies. Didn't he always tell you to trust your gut?" He was right. That had been Grandpa's constant advice throughout my life. And right now, my gut was screaming that something was very wrong. I remembered Uncle Robert's convenient visits to Grandpa always when I wasn't scheduled to be there. The way he'd insist on helping with medication management despite having no medical background. The missing bottles of heart medication I could never account for. Before I could ask Harold anything else, a security guard from the building approached. "Everything okay here, Manam?" he asked, eyeing Harold suspiciously. Harold backed away, but his gaze remained locked with mine. "Remember," he said, "they'll try to make you doubt yourself. Don't let them." Then he turned and disappeared around the corner of the building. The security guard frowned. "These homeless folks can be aggressive. You should report him if he bothered you." "No," I said, slipping the key into my purse. "He wasn't bothering me." As I entered the imposing glass building, my mind raced. How did Harold know so much about my grandfather, about me, and what did he mean about documents being switched? The doubt he predicted was already creeping in, but beneath it was a growing certainty that I was walking into something much more complex than a simple will reading. The elevator ride to the 14th floor gave me time to compose myself, but my heart was pounding as the doors opened to reveal the elegant reception area of Davidson, Morris & Associates. The receptionist smiled professionally and directed me to a conference room at the end of the hall. With each step, Harold's warning echoed in my mind, "Don't go there. They're waiting to hurt you." But I had to know the truth, whatever it was about my grandfather's last wishes and the family secrets that might have died with him, or perhaps hadn't died with him after all. The conference room at Davidson, Morris & Associates exuded wealth and power. Dark mahogany paneling lined the walls, and an enormous table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by high-backed leather chairs. Family portraits of the firm's founding partners stared down disapprovingly, as if judging everyone who entered. Uncle Robert was already there, standing near the window with a tumbler of what looked like scotch, though it was barely 2 p.m. His tailored charcoal suit probably cost more than 3 months of my nurse's salary. When he saw me, his face arranged itself into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Autumn, dear, so good of you to join us." He approached and air-kissed my cheek, the scent of expensive cologne washing over me. "Such a difficult time for the family," and nodded stiffly, noting how he emphasized family as if I were merely an adjacent relation rather than Grandpa Frank's granddaughter. Cousin Derek sat at the table, scrolling through his phone with studied nonchalance. At 31, he had the same sharp features as his father but lacked Robert's polished veneer. When he glanced up at me, naked hostility flashed across his face before he caught himself. "Hey, Q's," he said flatly before returning to his screen. Aunt Patricia stood in the corner whispering intensely with a man I didn't recognize, tall, broad-shouldered, with the blank expression of someone accustomed to following orders rather than giving them. When she noticed me looking, she abruptly ended their conversation and approached, her heels clicking aggressively on the hardwood floor. Autumn. A single word stripped of warmth. I trust you've been well. Before I could respond, the door opened and Mr. Davidson entered, carrying a leather portfolio. He was a small man with wire-rimmed glasses and thinning gray hair, the very picture of a traditional attorney. Behind him came Mrs. Reynolds, my grandfather's housekeeper of 15 years, her eyes red-rimmed from crying, and moved to hug her, grateful for a friendly face. Mrs. Reynolds, I didn't expect to see you here. She squeezed my hands. Your grandfather was specific about who should attend. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Stand your ground today, dear. Before I could ask what she meant, another young man entered, perhaps my age or a few years older, with kind eyes and a reporter's notebook tucked in his jacket pocket. He nodded politely to everyone but didn't introduce himself. Who invited the press? Uncle Robert demanded, gesturing at the notebook. Mr. Michael Barnes is here at the specific request of the deceased, Mr. Davidson said, ranging his papers at the head of the table. Now, if everyone would please be seated, we can begin. The next 30 minutes proceeded exactly as I had expected. Mr. Davidson read through the standard provisions of Grandpa Frank's will in a monotonous voice. The lakeside cabin went to Robert as anticipated. Various personal belongings were distributed, his watch collection to Derek, family photo albums to Aunt Patricia, a small sum to Mrs. Reynolds for her years of service. I received his fishing gear and tackle box, which made the key in my pocket suddenly feel heavier. Uncle Robert maintained a satisfied smile throughout, occasionally exchanging glances with the unknown man who now stood by the door like a sentinel. Derek smirked when my modest inheritance was announced, clearly pleased that I hadn't received anything of significant value. Then Mr. Davidson cleared his throat and set aside the document he'd been reading. That concludes the last will and testament to Franklin James Walker, he said. However, there is a second document, a trust established by Mr. Walker 6 months ago that modifies the disposition of his assets. The atmosphere in the room instantly changed. Uncle Robert's smile vanished, and he sat forward in his chair. What trust? I wasn't informed of any trust. Mr. Davidson removed a sealed envelope from his portfolio, his hands trembling slightly. This trust document was prepared by a different law firm and delivered to me with instructions to open it only during this meeting. As he broke the seal, I noticed he kept glancing nervously at Robert, as if afraid of his reaction. The strange warning from Harold echoed in my mind. The documents were switched. Franklin Walker established the Walker Family Trust with assets previously unknown to this firm. Mr. Davidson read, his voice growing quieter as the implications of the document became clear. While the real property bequeathed in his will remains as stated, Mr. Walker's financial assets, including his controlling interest in Cornerstone Medical Supply, offshore accounts totaling approximately $2.3 million, and patents registered in his name, are to be transferred in their entirety to his granddaughter, Autumn Elizabeth Walker. The room erupted. Uncle Robert slammed his glass down so hard I thought it would shatter. Derek let out a string of profanities. Aunt Patricia's face went white with fury. This is preposterous, Robert shouted. My father didn't have that kind of money, and Cornerstone is my company. According to these documents, Mr. Davidson continued, his voice steadier now, Mr. Walker maintained 51% ownership of Cornerstone since its founding, though he allowed Robert Walker to manage operations. The trust stipulates that Autumn must investigate certain discrepancies in the company's business practices and financial records before taking full control. Michael Barnes was quietly taking notes, his expression unreadable. Mrs. Reynolds reached over and squeezed my hand in silent support. I sat frozen in shock. Grandpa Frank had been a modest man with simple tastes. I'd had no idea he possessed such wealth or that he owned my uncle's company. And what discrepancies needed investigating? I'll contest this, Uncle Robert hissed, rising to his feet. This trust is a fabrication. My father was not in his right mind in his final months. The trust was established well before his illness progressed, Mr. Davidson replied. Though he seemed to be rushing through the proceedings now, it was properly witnessed and notarized. All the documentation is in order. Aunt Patricia's cold eyes fixed on me. You have no idea what you're getting into, she said quietly. Some inheritances come with a price too high to pay. Was that a threat? I thought of Harold's warning about them waiting to hurt me and felt a chill despite the warm room. Mr. Davidson handed me a thick envelope. These are the access codes, account numbers, and keys to your grandfather's safe deposit box. The trust becomes active immediately. He glanced at his watch. If there are no further questions, this concludes our business today. This isn't over, Derek snarled as he pushed back from the table. Not by a long shot. As everyone rose to leave, the tension in the room was palpable. I clutched the envelope to my chest, feeling simultaneously victorious and terrified. Grandpa Frank had trusted me with his legacy, but he's also thrust me into what was clearly a dangerous family battle. And judging by the murderous look in Uncle Robert's eyes as he stormed out, the homeless man's warning had been right on target. The law office's underground parking garage was dimly lit and eerily quiet as I made my way to my car. My hands still trembled slightly from the confrontation in the conference room, and the manila envelope Mr. Davidson had given me felt like it weighed 100 pounds. As I approached my Honda Civic parked in a distant corner, I spotted a figure leaning against it, Uncle Robert. His earlier rage had been replaced by a cold, calculated calm that was somehow more frightening. "We need to talk, Autumn," he said, not moving from his position blocking my driver's side door. Behind him, Derek emerged from between two parked cars, and I realized they had deliberately cornered me. "I don't think we have anything to discuss right now," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'm still processing everything myself." "My father was not of sound mind," Robert insisted. "You know that better than anyone. You saw his decline." He was confused, easily manipulated. "Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing," I countered, clutching my purse with the key Harold had given me. "He was sharp until the end." Derek snorted. "So come on. The old man thought you were some kind of angel. He didn't see how you were playing him." "I never." "Save it," Uncle Robert interrupted. "I'm going to contest this trust and I'll win. But I'm willing to be reasonable. We can make this all go away, come to a private arrangement that's generous to you without destroying what I've built." The implication was clear: take a payoff and disappear. As I struggled to formulate a response, a voice called out from behind me. "Miss Walker, do you have a moment?" It was Michael Barnes, the young man with the notebook from the will reading. He approached confidently, seemingly unintimidated by Robert and Derek's hostile glares. "This is a private conversation," Robert snapped. "Actually," Michael replied smoothly, "I was hoping to interview Miss Walker about her grandfather's legacy. I'm researching a piece on healthcare industry ethics." Uncle Robert's face darkened dangerously. "Who exactly are you?" "Michael Barnes, investigative journalist." He pulled out a business card and held it out. Though neither Robert nor Derek moved to take it, "I've been looking into Cornerstone Medical Supply for about 6 months now. Fascinating company history." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Uncle Robert straightened, no longer leaning on my car. "Derek, we're leaving. We'll continue this discussion later." His eyes locked with mine. "Think carefully about your next steps, Autumn. Family loyalty should count for something." As they walked away, Michael turned to me. "Are you okay? They seem pretty intense." "No, I'm not okay," I admitted, my voice shaking slightly. "I don't understand what's happening. Did you really know my grandfather?" "Not personally, no," Michael said, "but he contacted me 3 months ago with concerns about Cornerstone's business practices. When he realized how serious the situation was, he asked me to attend the will reading. He wanted to make sure you had someone in your corner from the start." I glanced around the parking garage nervously. "I don't think this is the place to talk." "You're right, they could still be watching." Michael pointed to his car. "Follow me. There's a coffee shop about 10 minutes from here where we can speak privately." Under normal circumstances, I would never have trusted a stranger so quickly, but these weren't normal circumstances, and my instincts told me Michael was genuinely trying to help. 20 minutes later, we were seated in a corner booth at a busy cafe, steaming mugs of coffee between us. "Your uncle's company has been involved in a systematic healthcare fraud scheme for years," Michael explained, keeping his voice low. "They've been supplying substandard medical equipment to hospitals across the Northeast while charging premium prices. I thought of my patients at Mass General, many of whom depended on equipment that might have come from Cornerstone." "What kind of equipment?" "Everything from basic supplies to critical care devices, heart monitors, ventilator components, even artificial heart valves." Michael pulled out his notebook. "Your grandfather initially invested in the company as a silent partner. The evidence suggests he had no idea what was happening until about a year ago. That's when he started asking me more questions about my work, I realized, about equipment failures and patient complications." Michael nodded. "When he discovered what Robert was doing, he tried to stop it internally. When that failed, he began gathering evidence." "And the trust? The money?" "The money is real. He was incredibly frugal and invested wisely over decades. But I believe the trust is his way of making things right. By giving you control of the company, He's positioned you to expose the truth and fix what's broken. My phone buzzed with an incoming call. Mrs. Reynolds. I answered immediately. Autumn dear, where are you? Her voice was tense with worry. I'm at a coffee shop with Michael Barnes. Why, what's wrong? Someone's broken into your grandfather's house. I went by to water the plants and found the place ransacked. She paused. They were very thorough, especially in his study. Did you call the police? Yes, but, she hesitated, I don't think you should go back to your apartment tonight. They took the spare key you kept in the kitchen drawer, the one to your place. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Where should I go? You can stay with me. I'm at 1458 Maple Street. Come straight here. After hanging up, I relayed the conversation to Michael, who looked grim. This is moving faster than I expected, he said. They're obviously looking for something specific. I remembered the key in my purse, the one to Grandpa's fishing tackle box. I think I know what they want. Before I could explain, my phone buzzed again with a text message from an unknown number. They're watching Mrs. Reynolds' house. Don't go there. Meet at 237 Pine Street instead. I showed Michael the text. Could be a trap, he said, but we should check it out carefully. I'll drive. The address turned out to be a homeless shelter in a converted church. As we parked across the street, I spotted a familiar figure sitting on the steps. Harold, the homeless man who had warned me outside the loft. That's him, I told Michael, the man who knew my grandfather. As we approached, Harold stood, relief evident on his face. You came good. We don't have much time. You know what's going on, I said. It wasn't a question. Harold nodded. Better than most. I was Frank's original business partner in Cornerstone Medical Supply. Looking at this weathered man in his warm clothes, it was hard to imagine him as a successful businessman, but as he led us inside to his sparse room at the shelter and began to tell his story, the pieces of the puzzle started falling into place, revealing a picture more disturbing than I could have imagined. Harold's room at the shelter was small but meticulously organized. A single bed, a nightstand with a warm Bible, and a plastic storage container that apparently held all his worldly possessions. He cleared some books from the bed so I could sit, while Michael leaned against the wall. We should get your grandfather's tackle box, Harold said. Did you bring the key? I nodded, pulling it from my purse. It's in my car at my apartment. Then we need to be careful, Harold warned. If they've been to your grandfather's house, they may be watching your place too. Michael volunteered to drive, and we took a circuitous route to my apartment building, watching for any signs of surveillance. The parking lot seemed normal, no unfamiliar vehicles or suspicious characters. I'll get the tackle box from my trunk, I said. It'll take just a minute. The familiar weight of the green metal box was reassuring as I carried it back to Michael's car. It had always been just a container for Grandpa's fishing supplies, hooks, lures, line, and the occasional lucky charm. Now it potentially held answers to questions I hadn't even known to ask. We returned to the shelter and Harold locked the door behind us. With trembling hands, I inserted the small brass key into the tackle box lock. It opened with a click that seemed impossibly loud in the quiet room. The top tray contained exactly what I expected: fishing gear, neatly organized. But when I lifted that tray out, I discovered a false bottom beneath. Hidden in the secret compartment were USB drive, a stack of letters bound with twine, and several manila envelopes filled with photographs and documents. He was always clever about hiding important things, Harold said with a sad smile. Michael connected the USB drive to his laptop, and we huddled around the small screen. The drive contained hundreds of files, patient records, financial statements, email correspondence, and more, all meticulously organized and dated. These are records of defective equipment supplied by Cornerstone, Michael explained as he scrolled through the files. Heart monitors that give false readings, ventilator components that fail prematurely, surgical supplies made with substandard materials. My nursing training made the implications horrificously clear. These could cause patient deaths. They have, Harold said grimly. Your grandfather compiled cases where equipment failures led to patient complications or worse, over 100 cases in the past 5 years alone. The financial documents showed a complex scheme of fraudulent billing, charging premium prices for cheaply made products, falsifying quality control certifications, and kickbacks to hospital administrators who agreed to exclusive contracts. Grandpa was an investor in all this, I asked, my heart sinking. Initially, yes, but unwittingly, Harold explained. Frank was the financial backbone when we started Cornerstone 30 years ago. The company was legitimate then. We wanted to provide quality medical supplies at reasonable prices. But when your Uncle Robert joined the company 20 years ago, things changed. Harold showed me letters from my grandfather to Robert, dating back several years, expressing growing concern about quality control issues and customer complaints. The most recent letter showed Grandpa Frank had become aware of the full extent of the fraud and was threatening to go public if Robert didn't make changes. Robert pushed me out first, Harold continued, framed me for embezzlement when I questioned some financial irregularities. I lost everything fighting the legal battles, my home, my savings, eventually even my family. Frank didn't discover the truth until much later, when it was too late to help me. My hands trembled as I opened an envelope of photographs. They showed Uncle Robert meeting with men I didn't recognize in parking garages and restaurant back rooms. Each photo was carefully labeled with names, dates, and locations. Your grandfather hired a private investigator last year, Michael explained. These photos connect Robert to known criminal organizations that supplied the counterfeit materials. As a nurse, I'd witnessed equipment failures throughout my career, monitors that gave inconsistent readings, supplies that broke under normal use. We'd always attributed these to normal manufacturing flaws or user error. Now I realized many of these incidents might have been directly connected to my family's company. There's a personal connection for you too, Harold said quietly, handing me a folder. Your grandfather asked me to make sure you saw this. Inside were patient records from Massachusetts General Hospital, my hospital, showing complications and adverse events tied to Cornerstone products. With growing horror, I recognized names of patients I had treated, including an elderly woman who had died after her heart monitor failed to alert staff to her deteriorating condition. Oh God, I whispered, remembering the woman's grieving family. I told them we did everything we could, but we were using faulty equipment. It's not your fault, Michael assured me. You didn't know. But I should have, I insisted, anger building inside me. We all should have asked more questions when equipment kept failing. As I continued examining the documents, my phone chimed with a text message. It was from Mrs. Reynolds. Men came looking for you. They searched my house. Be careful. Almost simultaneously, Michael's phone buzzed. Someone broke into my apartment, he said, frowning at the screen. My neighbor called when he saw the door open. Harold walked to his small window and peered out cautiously. We need to move. It won't take them long to check the shelters. As he turned back, I noticed a manila envelope on his bed that hadn't been there before. What's that? Harold picked it up, his expression grim. They've been watching longer than we thought. Inside were surveillance photos of me entering and leaving my apartment, at the hospital, having coffee with friends. The most recent showed me entering the shelter with Michael less than 2 hours ago. How did these get here? Michael demanded. Someone slipped them under my door while we were gone, Harold replied. A warning. My phone rang an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered and put it on speaker. Autumn, Uncle Robert's voice was calm, reasonable. This has gone far enough. I'm prepared to offer you a very generous settlement, $5 million, to walk away from the trust and everything in that tackle box. The amount was staggering, far more than I could earn in decades as a nurse, but all I could think about were the patients who had suffered because of Cornerstone's fraud. How did you know about the tackle box? I asked. I know my father, he replied smoothly, and I know how he felt about you. The offer expires at midnight. After that, things become complicated for everyone involved. The call ended, leaving us in silence. For a brief moment, I considered taking the money and disappearing. I could start a new life anywhere, free from the danger and the responsibility of exposing decades of fraud. Your grandfather faced this same choice, Harold said quietly, seeming to read my thoughts. Money or truth? He chose truth, even knowing what it might cost him. I thought of Grandpa Frank, of our Sunday dinners and fishing trips, of his unwavering moral compass and the way he's always encouraged me to do what was right, not what was easy. I need to think, I said, but in my heart I already knew what my decision would be. With the shelter no longer safe, we relocated to a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town. The place was nearly empty, allowing Harold to explain his full history with my family while Michael and I picked at plates of lukewarm food. Frank and I started Cornerstone with a simple mission, Harold began, his hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee. We'd both seen family members receive substandard medical care because of budget constraints. We believed patients deserved quality equipment at prices hospitals could afford. The business had thrived initially, but when Uncle Robert joined after getting his BAA, he pushed for aggressive growth and higher profit margins. At first, it was just cutting corners on packaging, marketing budget tricks, Harold explained, but then he started sourcing components from unregulated factories overseas, falsifying quality certifications. When Harold discovered heart monitor cables that failed safety tests were being shipped to hospitals, he confronted Robert. I threatened to go to the DME. The next day there was $1 million discrepancy in the company accounts, and all evidence pointed to me. Robert had been thorough in framing Harold. False documents showed he'd been embezzling for years. His company email contained communications with offshore accounts he'd never created. I spent everything I had fighting the charges, Harold said, his voice hollow. My wife couldn't handle the stress and left with our children. I lost my home, my reputation. By the time the criminal charges were dismissed for lack of evidence, I had nothing left. No one would hire me with the cloud of suspicion Robert had created. And my grandfather didn't know, I asked. Frank was semi-retired by then, trusting Robert to run things. Robert controlled what information reached him. Harold's eyes grew distant. When Frank finally discovered the truth last year, he tried to make amends, but by then He gestured at his worn clothes. Michael had been examining more files from the USB drive. According to these records, Cornerstone has been supplying equipment to your hospital for the past 8 years, Autumn. A cold realization washed over me. The equipment failures I'd witnessed weren't random events, they were part of a systematic fraud that had endangered countless patients. The Rodriguez case, I murmured, remembering a 7-year-old boy who had nearly died when his ventilator malfunctioned during a routine procedure. The Cheng case, the Williams case, they were all using Cornerstone equipment. Your grandfather started connecting these dots when you mentioned equipment issues during your Sunday dinners, Harold said. That's why he began investigating more deeply. My phone rang again. Mrs. Reynolds. They searched my entire house, she said without preamble, her voice shaking. They took your grandfather's journals, his computer, everything. In Autumn, they found something in his medicine cabinet. Empty pill bottles with labels that don't match what he was prescribed. What do you mean? The heart medication bottles have your uncle's fingerprints all over them, and the pills inside, they weren't what the label said. I've worked for enough doctors to know the difference. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Are you saying Uncle Robert tampered with Grandpa's medication? I can't prove it, Mrs. Reynolds said carefully, but your grandfather suspected something was wrong. That's why he started having you bring his medications directly from the pharmacy in those final weeks. After we hung up, I relayed the conversation to Harold and Michael. Harold nodded grimly. Frank told me he thought someone was replacing his heart medication with lookalikes. That's partly why he accelerated his plans to create the trust. Michael's face had gone pale. This goes beyond fraud. If Robert tampered with medication, it's murder, I finished, the word feeling surreal as I said it. Just then, Michael's phone chimed with a text. The color drained from his face as he read it. Someone left photographs on my editor's desk, he said. Pictures of me meeting with both of you, plus copies of my notes on Cornerstone. There was a note saying I'm fabricating a story to help you extort your family. They're trying to discredit you preemptively, Harold said. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Final offer $5 million, no questions asked. Midnight deadline. Think of your future, Autumn. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was exposing the truth worth risking everything, possibly even my life? I could take the money, move somewhere tropical, start fresh. But then I thought about my patients, about the Rodriguez boy who still had nightmares about waking up unable to breathe, about Mrs. Cheng, who suffered permanent heart damage after her monitor failed to alert staff to her arrhythmia, about all the patients who would continue to be harmed if Cornerstone's practices remained unexposed. I need to see this through, I said finally, for Grandpa, for the patients, for you, Harold. Harold's weathered face showed a mix of relief and concern. Your grandfather said you'd say that. He also said to tell you there's a right way and a wrong way to fight this battle. What's the right way, I asked. You don't go in alone, Michael answered, his expression resolute despite the threats against his career, and you don't play by their rules. We spent the next hour formulating a plan, one that would use Uncle Robert's confidence against him, that would leverage Grandpa Frank's evidence in the most effective way possible. It was risky, but as Harold reminded us, sometimes the only way out is through. As dawn broke, casting long shadows through the diner's windows, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The path forward was dangerous, but for the first time since this began, it was clear. My phone buzzed one more time, another text from the unknown number, presumably Uncle Robert. Time's running out, what's your answer? I typed my response, let's meet, we can work this out, Grandpa's cabin, 7 p.m. tomorrow. The reply came almost instantly, smart choice, Autumn, come alone. I put down my phone and looked at my unlikely allies, a homeless former businessman and an investigative journalist, both risking everything to help me uncover the truth. He thinks I'm going to take his deal, I said. Michael's smile was grim. That's exactly what we want him to think. The lakeside cabin had always been my sanctuary, a place of fishing trips, campfires, and Grandpa Frank's stories under starlit skies. Now, as I approached it alone in the fading evening light, it felt like entering enemy territory. Before leaving the diner that morning, we had finalized our plan. Michael had contacted a former classmate at the Bay who specialized in healthcare fraud. Harold had identified which documents provided the strongest evidence, and I had prepared myself to face my uncle one last time, wearing a wire that would capture everything. Remember, Michael had said as he helped me secure the small recording device beneath my sweater, your only job is to get him talking. Don't push too hard. Let him think you're considering his offer but need more assurances. The cabin looked the same as always: weathered cedar siding, wide porch with rocking chairs, the old fishing boat tied to the dock, but the expensive black SUV parked out front was a jarring reminder of why I was here. Uncle Robert opened the door before I could knock. Autumn, right on time. His smile seemed genuine, his manner relaxed and confident. Come in, I've poured us some of your grandfather's favorite scotch. The cabin's interior was unchanged, the same rustic furniture, fishing trophies, and family photos on the walls, but the atmosphere felt wrong, tainted by what I now knew. Uncle Robert gestured to the couch. Please sit, we have much to discuss. I remained standing. Before we talk, I need to know something. Did you tamper with Grandpa's heart medication? His expression hardened momentarily before smoothing into concerned confusion. What? That's absurd. Who's been filling your head with these conspiracy theories? That homeless man. His name is Harold, I said calmly, your former business partner. Harold Ellis lost his mind years ago, Robert dismissed with a wave. Destroyed himself with drug abuse after embezzling from the company. Is that who you're trusting over family? I trust the evidence, I replied. The patient records showing Cornerstone equipment failures, the financial documents proving fraud, the tampered medication bottles with your fingerprints. For a moment Robert's mask slipped, revealing cold calculation behind his eyes. Then he sighed heavily and sat down, swirling the amber liquid in his glass. Business is complicated, Autumn. Healthcare doubly so. There are necessary compromises to remain competitive in this market. Compromises that kill people, I challenged. Isolated incidents magnified out of proportion. His tone was reasonable, as if explaining something complex to a child. Every medical company faces similar issues. The important thing is how we manage them. By covering them up, by bribing hospital administrators? A new voice spoke from the doorway to the kitchen. She knows everything, Dad. Just tell her the truth. Derek stepped into the room, his expression unreadable. I tensed, suddenly aware of how vulnerable I was. Stay out of this, Derek, Robert snapped. No, my cousin approached, hands raised to show he meant no harm. This has gone too far. Framing Harold was one thing, but Grandpa, your own father? Robert's face flushed with anger. I said stay out of it. Did you kill him? I asked directly, heart pounding beneath the wire. Don't be dramatic, Robert scoffed. Frank was old, his heart was failing. I simply accelerated the inevitable. Derek looked physically ill. Jesus, Dad. He was going to destroy everything I built, Robert continued, his voice rising. 30 years of work, millions in profits, relationships with every major hospital in 6 states. He was going to throw it all away over some misplaced ethical concerns. People died because of your compromises, I said. People die in hospitals every day. Robert slammed his glass down. That's the nature of the business. We provide equipment at prices hospitals can afford. If we met every gold standard regulation, costs would triple and hospitals would close. Then where would your precious patients be? The front door opened suddenly and Aunt Patricia rushed in, her face tight with anxiety. Robert, we need to go now. I just got a call. She froze when she saw me. What is she doing here? You were supposed to get the documents and leave. Change of plans, Robert said coldly. Autumn knows too much. She's been gathering evidence, working with that journalist. Patricia's eyes narrowed. Then we have a serious problem. The atmosphere in the cabin shifted from tense to dangerous. Robert moved toward a drawer in the side table where Grandpa had always kept a hunting knife. Derek stepped between us. Stop it, both of you. This is insane. Move, Derek, Robert ordered. No, my cousin's voice was firm. I've watched you destroy people for years, Harold, competitors, even Grandpa. I'm done. You ungrateful, Robert began, but was interrupted by the sound of vehicles pulling up outside. Patricia rushed to the window. "Robert, it's the buy." What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Robert lunged for me, but Derek intercepted him, the two of them crashing into the coffee table. Patricia made for the back door, only to find it blocked by federal agents. Within moments, the cabin was filled with law enforcement personnel, and Uncle Robert was being read his rights, his face contorted with rage. "You set me up," he snarled at me as they handcuffed him. "No," I replied calmly. "You did that yourself, a long time ago." As the agents led Robert and Patricia away, Derek remained behind, looking lost. "I didn't know about Grandpa," he said quietly. "I swear, Autumn, I knew about the business stuff, but not that." "Why the change of heart?" I asked. He shrugged helplessly. "I guess I finally realized I was becoming him, and I didn't like who that was." In the days that followed, the full extent of Cornerstone's fraud was exposed. The buy investigation uncovered even more than Grandpa Frank had documented: a decade of systematic fraud affecting hospitals nationwide, resulting in dozens of patient deaths and countless injuries. Uncle Robert and several hospital administrators were charged with multiple felonies. Aunt Patricia faced lesser charges but significant civil liability. Derek cooperated with authorities in exchange for immunity, providing crucial insider testimony. As the trust's executor, I established a victim compensation fund with half of Grandpa's fortune. The other half went to rebuilding Cornerstone from the ground up. With Harold as my advisor, we implemented rigorous quality control and transparent pricing, determined to fulfill the company's original mission. I returned to nursing part-time, unable to fully leave the profession I loved, but my focus shifted to patient advocacy and healthcare reform, using my position as Cornerstone's owner to push for industry-wide changes. 2 months after the arrests, I found Grandpa Frank's journal and the evidence returned by the buy. The final entry, dated 3 days before his death, read, "Autumn will find the truth. She always could see through people's lies. I'm trusting her with everything, not because she's my granddaughter, but because she's the only one who will do what's right, no matter the cost. The fishing box key is with Harold now. The truth will set us all free, even if I won't be here to see it." On a crisp autumn morning, I sat on the dock of the cabin now legally mine after the court proceedings with a fishing rod in hand. Harold sat beside me, showing remarkable skill despite his years away from the sport. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said as I reeled in a small bass. "I hope so," I replied, watching the sunrise reflect off the lake. "Sometimes I still feel his presence here." "In a way he is here," Harold said thoughtfully, "in the company being run ethically again, in the patients getting proper care, in you." We sat in comfortable silence, the only sounds the gentle lapping of water against the dock and the occasional splash of a fish. The inheritance Grandpa Frank had left me wasn't just money or a company, it was truth, justice, and the courage to stand up for what's right. As I released the bass back into the lake, I felt a profound sense of peace. The homeless man's warning had changed everything, sending me down a path I never expected, but it had led me exactly where I needed to be. Have you ever received a warning from an unexpected source that changed your life, or faced a difficult choice between taking the easy path or standing up for what's right? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below, and if this revenge story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life stories of courage and integrity. Share this revenge story with someone who might need a reminder that doing the right thing matters, even when it's difficult. Thank you for joining me on this journey of ultimate revenge story, and remember, sometimes the most unexpected warnings led to the most powerful revenge story. In the end, the best revenge story isn't about hurting others, but about restoring justice and finding peace.